Let's start with the Big East. And Xavier is one team that is fading fast, but they had to be happy with some of those results because they're right on the cut line. The Big East, there's 6 teams safely in. I think if you assume Creighton is in, and then Xavier, I think Bracket Matrix has them like barely in right now, but they're obviously trending in the wrong direction. But let's talk the Big East Conference Tournament. Always a fun one. 11 teams get in. Obviously played at Madison Square Garden. March 9th through the 12th. There's 5 byes: Providence, Villanova, UConn, Creighton, and Marquette. We have our round 1 games already set. St. John's, DePaul is a bummer. 2 teams that are like trending up and playing well and healthy, and they get each other in the first round. Seton Hall, Georgetown, Xavier, Butler. Defending champ, Georgetown, was an 8 seed. I was just talking about this with Matt. We have Georgetown, who's, 150 to 1. Georgia Tech and Oregon State, defending champs that have 0 chance of winning their conference tournament. Bizarre year last year. I'll start with a trivia question before we dive into the bracket and the odds. Lowest seed to win the Big East tournament ever? What's your guess, or do you know it?
Is it not I guess it's not Georgetown, the 8 seed last year. That must not be it.
It's not.
Does it go back to the 16 team era? I'll say the 9 seed. Was UConn the 9 seed the year they won the title?
9 seed is correct. Ding, ding, ding. But it was Cuse in 2004 with all those. I think it was like that year they had all those crazy games and close wins, and they won 4 or 5 games in 4 or 5 days. But 9 seed is correct. So you're starting off with a winner. All right, let's take a look at the odds. Nova's the favorite, plus 165. We know how good they are. They are well coached, well schooled. They're just going to grind you down. Excellent passing team, going to get excellent offense. They're very good. UConn, actually second, plus 350. Providence around 5 to 1. Marquette 7 to 1. Marquette really fading down the stretch, 4 and 5 down the stretch, although they did sweep Nova. And so does that make them more intriguing? We'll talk about them. Creighton 10 to 1. Seton Hall, then you're getting to Seton Hall. St. John's 27 to 1. Xavier 30 to 1. Butler 35 to 1. DePaul 65 to 1. So let's attack this. Well, first I'll ask you, when you first look at this bracket, I can tell you my thoughts, and then I'll get yours, see if you agree. This narrative that, Providence is lucky. I tweeted out the other week, I said, we're going to get Providence like at plus 3 in the first round against like a 14 seed, and they're going to win by like 40. Because everyone's just like, they're unlucky. I want to fade them. So I look at, and they're, 5 to 1. UConn is plus 350, and they're in the same side of the bracket as Villanova. And Providence has to play either a fading, Xavier team. Butler's been playing better with Hodges and Enzi, but Providence should win that game. Then they get a Creighton team that doesn't have Nembhard, and I think they're trash without him, or a fading Marquette team. So like their path to the final is not tough. I mean, UConn has to play Seton Hall. We'll talk about maybe the status of Richmond, which could be big. And Villanova has to play like St. John's and DePaul's team that are playing really well. DePaul's a covering wagon. So like there's some landmines in that side of the bracket. So my first thought was, maybe there's some value with Providence here. What were your first thoughts on the bracket before we dig in here?
Yeah, kind of even more just like higher level. I just looked at it and said, the top half is where I want to bet, because the bottom half is loaded with teams that are playing well, like the bad teams are playing well, that are on the bottom half, and it has the 2 best teams, Villanova and UConn. So if I want a future, I am hunting the top side of that bracket where the teams aren't playing as well. Honestly, of that top half of the bracket, the 5 that are up there, I would argue that only Providence is playing really well right now and is healthy. Like if you put those 2 qualifiers on it, it's only Providence. So if you wanted to try to force one, like a long shot, I would probably look at the top half too. Like if you think somehow Xavier trends up in the postseason or something. But yeah, like I think there's a very clear divide between the top half and the bottom half. That was my biggest takeaway. Yeah,
in the bottom half, if you were gonna St. John's is DePaul's around 65 to 1. I would kind of think I would prefer DePaul over St. John's. But the problem is, I think St. John's, curious to get your thoughts on this. I think St. John's is a better shot at beating Villanova than DePaul, especially after watching those 2 games. DePaul kind of just like, they thrive in transition. They kind of get caught playing how other teams play. But they're healthy now, but it's hard for me to see them beating Villanova. St. John's, no matter who they play, they're just going to muck up the game. So my problem is that, St. John's DePaul could go either way. You're getting a much better odds with DePaul, but I just don't think that DePaul can beat Villanova. But DePaul's been incredible since getting healthier and just a covering machine. Any thoughts on that particular matchup and or the odds there?
Yeah, I mean, DePaul, kind of what you're doing. We call them a pace taker. Like whatever the other team plays, that's what they end up doing. So if they're playing somebody like St. John's, they can thrive because they're going to get in the track meet that they want to be in. Freeman, Liberty, and Jones are so good in transition. But then Villanova, they're going to end up playing a bogged down half court game like Villanova wants them to. And I think they are pretty much hopeless in that situation. But St. John's has given Villanova trouble in the past. I remember last year, Posh got in Colin Gillespie's grill quite a bit and forced him into one of his worst games of his college career, and can still potentially do that. Schimppenny's playing a lot better. They have the long athletes to compete with Nova and deal with their switching. So yeah, St. John's was a team I was thinking about as a dark horse. If St. John's had gotten the 8 or 9 seed, I'd be on them, betting them as a future on that top half of the bracket. The hesitance is having to go through Villanova in the second round.
Yep. Injury concerns with Creighton. Do you agree? Do you think Creighton is done, as far as making a run of the tournament or winning this without Nembhard? And then anything on Seton? I was actually surprised Seton still ended up pulling it out down to their third point guard after they lost Richmond. I haven't seen an update on him, but his hand injury looms large as well. Are those two teams complete stayaways because of the injury situation?
Yeah, especially Creighton for me. I think there's other talent on the roster. They beat UConn without Nembhard, but he just means so much to them. I think the fact that they did lose to Seton Hall's third string point guard is reflective of how important he is to them. He's playing basically every minute before he got hurt. So I'm glad they got the UConn win done because I think they belong in the tournament for what they did all season, and they don't have the excuse of like, oh, you didn't win any games without Nembhard. They got a good win without him. I just don't see where they go without like a true creator, somebody to control the game. That's trouble for the Blue Jays. Seton Hall, like you said, they down to third string point guard. Aiken was really good before he got hurt. They were like a run and gun team for a while, which is not what I expected coming in. Then he got hurt. They kind of reformed into the defensive identity that I was expecting with a huge lineup, Richmond at point guard. But now if he's out, that is going to be a serious problem. So that's one that's like, as we record this on Sunday night, we don't know exactly what his status will be. You got to monitor it going forward.
Yep. Yeah, I think. By the way, Marquette, they're fading here. They were a wagon thing, but they swept Villanova. They're in the opposite side of the bracket. Are you souring on this team of late?
Yeah, I came into the year and I was like, I think they're going to be awesome as an underdog. I like them getting points, like kind of counted out. I think Shaka's a great motivator. But then they got maybe a little too high in some of the betting markets, the value, because they won so many games. They swept Villanova. They blew out Providence. They were like, okay, look at this team go. And then they were favored a lot. And I just think they got to the point where it was not the right circumstances to back them. And they've obviously lost a few games down the stretch here. So yeah, I'm souring a little bit, but they do have maybe arguably the best player in the league in Justin Lewis. And that's always a huge asset as you enter postseason play, because you want to be able to throw him the ball and rely on somebody to get you buckets.
Yep. So I think that we're kind of in agreement here. I think if you're going to take a future, if you don't want to get too crazy, I think Providence has the value up top. And by the way, everyone's going to, they're lucky. They win every game by 1 to 5 points. Well, that works in a Big East tournament when you just need to win games. We're not talking about covering 6 here. We're talking about advancing against some potentially wounded and or fading teams just to get to the final. And then keep in mind, Providence with like nothing to play for played. Granted, there was shot quality marked it as a 17-point loss. They didn't have Durham, but they played Villanova tough. It's a veteran, well-coached team. They also got a lot of rest. They didn't play this weekend, and they don't have a bench really. It's not a deep team, so you got to win 3 games in 3 days. So I think that rest helps. And if you want to take a flyer, I think we both agree that it's St. John's. The problem is you got a landmine with DePaul in a game that could. DePaul could realistically win in a shootout. Should be a very entertaining game to watch. But look, St. John's, can they win 4 games in 4 days? I mean, it's a team that plays fast. tries to muck it up, and but they're going to play Nova. They're going to play UConn. It's not going to be as many possessions, but as you said, they've given Nova trouble in the past. This year against Connecticut on the road, they lost in overtime, and at home they lost by 3. And they have a ton of talent, and they kind of just ugly up games. So I think that's the way to go.
Can I add one more that sort of intrigues me? Just because I said, like, if I want to take a flyer, it'd be a top half. I did see one price of Butler 80-1. And if they, Xavier's fading, they almost beat Providence. Granted, it was without Durham and it was at Hinkle, but they are playing a lot better with Hodges. 80-1 in that kind of openish top half of the bracket isn't something I hate. That is getting a little wild with the Bulldogs, but it's at least worth a glance, I think.
Yeah, there's no one that now that they're fully healthy, and if you look, just without Hodges and Enzi, the results were ugly. But now that they're fully healthy, there's no one on that top half of the bracket that they can't beat on their good day. I don't hate that at all. First, we have 3 first-round games, and then we have Creighton Marquette is already set. Any of them stick out for a potential betting opportunity or something down the line for a matchup that might pop up?
I think you should live bet Georgetown when they get down 20 points, because that's what they do. And then they always charge back. And we saw Ewing have a good tournament last year. So that's one thing I would look at. I'm sure they'll get down big against Seton Hall. And then I'd probably be looking to back Marquette just because of the Nembhard injury. I still think Creighton's a little bit overvalued in the market because they had a good performance without him. Maybe the line isn't getting knocked because of his absence. So Marquette would be a team I'd be looking at too.
So what's Georgetown? I guess it depends somewhat on Richmond's status. Georgetown gonna be plus 12 against Seton Hall and then lose by 11 on a backdoor. I feel like that's been like the last 2 weeks. They're like plus 12 and they lose by 11 after they get down by 20.
Yep. It's automatic, like clockwork.